Hey everybody, it's Charles from HumbleMechanic.com. Today taking your questions on can a car last forever, sloppy shifter issues, cold start noises, and more. This is episode 242 of the Humble Mechanic Podcast. Alright, if you want to get a question on a show like this, email me, charles@humblemechanic.com, and put question for Charles in the subject. Be sure to ask that question right at the top, hit the enter button a couple times, then give me the details of said question. Also, if you don't see your question on a show like this, be sure to hit that quick videos playlist on YouTube where I do one question per video. Also, I've been posting a lot of videos on Facebook, so you may want to check over there as well. And if watching the video is not your flavor, you can check out an audio-only version of this and many other videos on HumbleMechanic.com, Google, iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever your favorite podcasting platform is. All right, let's talk about the sponsor of the day, which is CRP Automotive. CRP deals in a ton of OE maintenance and repair parts, timing belt kits, suspension components, and even fluids. In fact, they make the factory DSG fluid for Volkswagen and Audi. So check them out at crpautomotive.com. And remember, if you want to help support the show, but more importantly, get awesome discounts to places like Black Forest, Eastwood, MT Knives, Sonic Tools, Kerma TDI, Adams Polishes, and a whole bunch more, check out the Crew Membership program. You also get the downloads of the VW Audi training manuals that I build for the classes that I teach. Those are $375 each, and you get like 8 or 9 of them as of right now. As always, links down in the description to all of that. And now that we're done, one more thing. With each of these questions, there's timestamps down in the description. So if you think, oh, I really want to know about this thing that he said at the beginning, just scroll down, click that timestamp, and you can jump right to the answer/question that you want to know. Speaking of questions and answers, let's hit them. First one up is from Steve. With proper maintenance, can you keep a car going indefinitely? He also wanted to know what I think of swapping a 2.3 liter VR5. Yes, VR5. It's a good candidate for a Mark II Golf. I think the VR5 is cool. I think you're going to struggle to find parts for it. That would be my only thing, where the VR6 is a much more common engine, so you're probably going to have an easier time finding parts and not spend as much money. But dude, I support doing really weird, cool builds, and if you want to swap that VR5, swap it. Don't listen to what I say. Don't listen to what anybody says. If that's what you want to do, rock on and do it. Now, is it possible to keep a car, let's call it forever for the sake of this conversation? Of course it is. I think where people get tripped up a little bit in that, though, is that what's it going to cost to keep that car forever, right? We had a customer with a B5.5 Passat. I want to say it was an '02. Kevin, if you're watching this, you'll probably remember. It was an '02 Passat sedan V6, 4Motion, fully decked out, about loaded as you could get without being a W8. And over the years, the dude spent probably 20 grand fixing and maintaining this car. So the question isn't really, can you? Because you can. Now, it's going to take more than basic maintenance, right? When people think of, I got to do maintenance on my car, what do we think of, right? Oil changes. We think of tires, maybe brakes, like as a kind of a big one, maybe brakes, and a handful of other little things. You can't, I say can't, you most likely won't be able to just change the oil and put tires on your car and have it last 500,000 miles. You're going to have to fix broke stuff, right? Timing belts, timing chains, oil leaks, coolant leaks, all that stuff. And that's just engine. Let's look at what's going to happen in the inside. You're going to probably have to reupholster a seat. But think of 25 years of a car being on the road and some of the issues that come up. Suspension, you're going to need to replace the suspension at some point, probably 3 or 4 times to get a car to last that long. So I do think you can keep a car, forever. We have to look more importantly at what's it going to cost to do that. Now, if this is a sentimental car that maybe your grandpa owned and he passed it to your mom and now you got it, well, that's a totally different thing. But if you're just saying, and like Steve's question here, he's looking at his Mark IV Jetta TDI and his Mark IV GTI. Those are the two that he wants to keep. Dude, you can absolutely keep those for very high mileage. You just have to make sure that you're prepared mentally and financially to make some repairs that are definitely going to come up. I think it's a great goal. I just worry that we might spend way more money fixing, maintaining, rather than just replacing. And I know we live in like a very replace society. This thing is broken, let's throw it away and get a new one, and we're not making repairs on things. And it's a bit disheartening to me, but we also have to look at what's the smart financial thing to do. It's something we're kind of looking at now, looking at a few new SUVs and perhaps a Golf R for the family. But it's something you got to look at. So cool question. It's fun to talk about. I love talking about that. I just don't think in most cases that it's really going to make financial sense to keep maintaining a car versus getting something new. But the truth of the matter is, dude, spreadsheet that out and then you'll know. Is it more expensive or less expensive? You don't have to wonder. There's a saying that goes, Excel doesn't lie. It only just tells you the answer based on the numbers you put in. So if you put in accurate numbers, you're going to see in plain black and white, or if you use color, then color, you're going to see exactly what it is going to take to maintain and exactly what a new one's going to cost, and then you can make your decision there. But I applaud anyone that has that goal, because I think it's really cool. And who knows, maybe 15 years from now, I'll be sitting behind or in front of another camera talking about how I've owned that Passat for, almost 30 years, and she's still on the road. Let's hope so, but I've got a feeling that's probably not going to happen. All right, next one up is from David. Thanks for everything you do for the community. I appreciate that. Thank you. It's my goal to do great things for the community. I just got a 17 Passat 1.8 turbo and I want to make it something of a sleeper car. I only have community parking lot to work in, so besides the usual intake exhaust treatment, what do you think about stage 1 or stage 2 engine mounts? Would a performance manifold be easy enough and worth the gains? I have no idea. I'm also looking for the most affordable bolt-on upgrades that can be installed by myself within a day. Nothing too crazy, just enough for more oomph. And yes, I'll remember to order from Deutsche Auto Parts. Yeah, thanks for supporting Shop DAP, or really any of the supporting vendors. If you guys want to know some of the companies that do support this show and the community, check out that crew membership page. There's a list of them down there, and they all support the crew members with discounts, but they support the show as well. So I appreciate keeping those small businesses in business, and they do a lot for the community as well. So, David, cool question, and I love that now people are starting to embrace that 1.8 turbo that everybody hated when it came out, especially like in the all-track. Yes, I would have liked a 2-liter too, but the 1.8 has a lot of potential. So when you get past the intake and the exhaust, which are pretty basic bolt-ons, what do we do next? We have to really look at what our goal is, making this somewhat of a sleeper. Very cool concept. I love it. I'm a fan of that, especially if it was a wagon. For me, that just makes it a whole bunch cooler. Your thing about the mounts, I personally would not do engine mounts until the horsepower of my car dictated that I needed to. Whenever we change things like mounts, right? Whenever we change anything from factory, there's a give and a take. The take is that we maybe get a little bit less flex in the engine, or maybe we get a little more horsepower from the exhaust. The give in an exhaust is we get a louder exhaust. Sometimes that's our goal, which is awesome, right? Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's obnoxious and it drones on the highway. When it comes to engine mounts, in my experience, unless you're doing like a stage 0.5, you really run the risk of starting to get some feedback into the vehicle. And for me, on a daily drive or a car, that's not something I really want to do. Now, if we were talking about a build that was 400 horsepower, or heck, 300 wheel horsepower, then I would say, you know what, maybe we need to look at this. Something you can do where you're upgrading a little bit, but not going crazy with doing the mounts that actually mount the engine on the passenger side and the trans on the driver's side, is look at a pendulum mount. Some people call it a subframe mount. We used to call it a dog bone mount. That may still call it that on this newest stuff. You can look at that one because that's going to provide a little bit less back and forth in the engine. Probably not going to give you any more oomph, but it's probably going to change the way the car feels and behaves a little bit, and that may be what you're looking for. Now, for the most part, on this newest generation of turbo Volkswagens and Audis, there is no better dollar for dollar upgrade than getting it tuned. You can check out APR, you can check out Unitronic, you can check out Revo. I don't know if Revo makes one for your car. Go on their website and check it out. There's probably 3 or 4 other really good, legitimate tuners out there that are making tunes for these cars. And guys, you're getting for $600 40, 50, 60 horsepower. And it's not just the addition of the horsepower and torque, right? That's the number that looks cool on a paper. To me, these things are oftentimes more about how the car behaves. Did it improve throttle response? Is the car more fun to drive? Does it hold that gear just a little bit longer if it's an automatic? Or does it push that red line just a little bit if it's a manual transmission? If I owned this car, that's what I would do. Intake and exhaust, even intake I'm kind of up and down on. Exhaust, I'm a fan of. To me, if you're owning anything really 05.5 or 06 in the GTI and up, the first step is get it tuned after you do maintenance, of course. On David's 17, he's okay on maintenance most likely, depending on miles. But dude, dollar for dollar, a tune. All you have to do is you have to take your car, take your keys and go, please tune my car, please. And they'll do it for you in probably 30 minutes. You write them a check, slide your card, however you're gonna pay, and you're happy and the car's awesome. Beyond that, it starts to get expensive. You can do things like a turbo inlet pipe and things like that, and you're gonna see maybe something, maybe a little bit in change of note of the engine. You know, looking at intercoolers, you don't need it. You're not pushing enough power. When you start to get to the point of, okay, it's time to upgrade the turbocharger, now one, we're talking more work than you're gonna probably do in a day in your driveway. And you're talking about supporting mods. So charge cooler, downpipe. Downpipe might be another one I would look at as well, because you could probably do that in a day. If you're not, you know, an experienced technician or someone that's done a lot of them, you could do it in a day on jack stands pretty easily in your driveway, especially in the Passat, because there's so much room in it. I would look at those, downpipe and ECM tune, and go from there. I probably wouldn't do mounts. I'm sure there's a couple companies that make really great, a little bit stiffer mounts that you could look at. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure exactly who I would recommend because I haven't personally used them. So I struggle a little bit to recommend something I've not personally used or have no experience with at all. So do a little bit of research on the tune, and I think that's probably gonna be your best bang for the buck. All right, next one up is from a different David with a different 1.8 turbo. This is an 04 Jetta that had a cylinder head job done because the timing belt broke. He's got a noise, a whistle noise, for about 30 seconds on cold start, and sometimes when the car's been sitting for extended periods of time. So, David, there's no way any of us are gonna know exactly what this issue is, especially without hearing it. I would say the first thing you need to do is check that secondary air pump, because that's about what the timing structure of that system is gonna be. For those of you that don't know about the secondary air system, this is a system on many cars, not all Volkswagens either, that pushes air into the exhaust and it actually warms the catalytic converter up faster so we can get our engine into closed loop, which means that the engine's able to adjust fuel trims and things like that to lower emissions, improve fuel economy, and a whole bunch of other things. So I would look at that. I would check your secondary air pump, because those pumps are good about coming apart. What we would do at the dealership is you could buy a new pump for like $800, or because basically the rivets would come out, we would just knock the rivets out or drill them if we had to, and then put bolts and just squeeze it back together, and that fixed so many of them for, you know, $100 or whatever we would charge, a couple $100, because we'd pull the pump out and redo it that way, and there's usually a diagnostic charge on top of that, but no matter what, it was way less than even just the part for buying a new pump. So I'd look at that. I would look at your hoses. Since the cylinder head was off, we want to make sure all those hoses and connections are tight and good. Also, as always, whenever you guys are doing something big or even minor jobs, when you have a situation that exists after a repair, okay, we have a whistle noise after the cylinder head replacement or the cylinder head rebuild. The thing you really need to do first is double check your workmanship. It could be one bolt that got left loose on the exhaust, and that's the origin of your issue, right? And you might not be able to just go, oh, look, there it is. You might have to actually put a wrench on it. Things like that happen. Things like that happen to professionals all the time, which is why QCing our work is so important, right? Taking on that quality check test drive, because if you don't, the customer's doing it for you, and if there's an issue, they're gonna find it instead of you, and then you're gonna look like a jerk. So while this is a pretty short answer of, yeah, double check that secondary air pump first and then go back and check your workmanship, it really makes me want to encourage you guys that when you're doing a repair, even if you don't have any issues right away, always go back and double check your work. You can do something like use a little paint marker to tick a bolt off when you've torqued it down. That's a trick I learned from the Global Rallycross guys working on Scott Speed's car. Whatever it takes for you to make sure you remember that kind of stuff, do that. That way when you go back, all you have to do is take a quick glance and go torque, oh crap, I missed one because there's no paint on it. That helps me not only double check, right, while you're doing it, but a quick glance, you can go back and really, really fast make sure that you got your stuff done. But always go back first and do your workmanship check, check codes, maybe there's a code stored, before you get to tearing anything back apart or start throwing, loading up the parts cannon and blasting parts at it. And David, I'm not picking on you. This is just what I've seen happen to other people before. Always, always, always double check that workmanship, because that's probably where the issue is. Maybe you forgot a gasket, maybe you didn't tighten a bolt, who knows? All the scenarios can happen, but that's the starting point of finding out an issue after you've made a repair. All right, last one of the day is from Rakesh, and he's got a super long email, so I'm gonna sum it up. He's got a Mark V Jetta that sat for a few months, and then when he went back to drive it, he noticed the shifter, it's a manual transmission, the shifter was really sloppy. And of course, because the car sat in the Carolina sun, now the headliner's hanging down and it probably has a handful of other Mark V issues. Basically, Rakesh wants to know what can he do to improve the shifting of this car. So Rakesh, first thing, and he said he did watch the sloppy shifter video that I did, so I'll link that up for you guys if you want to check it out, and you can see kind of what I did on my R32, which is a very similar setup to his Mark V. First thing what we want to do is we want to open the hood and we want to look at the shifter bushings on top of the transmission. On that car, you might actually have to move the intake hose a little bit, or you could take the battery out, but honestly, if you lean over far enough between the engine cover and the battery, you should be able to see it pretty easily. We want to look at those bushings and make sure they're not collapsed or damaged or ripped or any of that kind of stuff. It may also be worth having a second person with you to sit in the car and shift the shifter through the gears with the car off. Don't have the car running when you're doing this. Just shift through the gears and see if you can see visually any slop or any issues at the transmission. And I say at the transmission first because it's easier. You don't have to take anything apart. Okay, everything's cool there? Awesome. Let's go into the car. And this is where our next check is going to be. Instead of shifting the shifter into gear, just kind of move it back and forth and see, is it side to side, or is it front to back that has that real heavy slop? There's two different cables, one side to side, one's front to back. Next, what we're gonna do is we're gonna pop that bezel around the shifter up and do that same thing, right? And you're probably gonna be able to see which bushing is collapsed or missing altogether, and you can then make the determination of what you wanna do from there. On my R32, I installed the Diesel Geek shifter kit, which is awesome. It will be going on every manual transmission car that I ever own that they make those shifter bushings for. And if they don't make that, I'm gonna hit up Jim and say, Jim, what's it gonna take for you to make me one for this car, right? Because it is such a good kit, and I love the positive, very positive shift that the R32 has. And boy, that thing before I started was like all over the place, right? Like driving an old air-cooled Beetle, you just gotta kind of hunt for the gears and hope you hit the right one. It was pretty bad. So do it in this order. Transmission first, right? Under the hood, on top of the trans, then at the shifter in the car. Because if you find the issue under the hood, there's maybe no reason to take the shifter bezel trim up and look there and see where your issue is. You're probably gonna see it pretty quickly, and then you can make, again, the determination of what to do from there. Is this a dealership part that we want to buy? Is it a Diesel Geek part we want to buy? Either way you go, I think both of those options are great. If you don't find anything there, okay, now I'm getting concerned because maybe we need to do a fluid exchange on this car and get some fresh, clean transmission fluid in it. Even though there's no service interval for the manual trans, that's something we can look at. What I might also do is take the cable ends off of the transmission and see if there's any hang up in the cables, because maybe those cables are rusted out and one is hanging up. I've not seen it too much on the Mark Vs, maybe one or two, and being in Carolina, I'm not too worried about rust. If this were a Northern Ohio car, yeah, I'd be worried about rust and way more on the shift cables, but because you're a Carolina car, not as big of a deal unless it's parked at the beach all the time. Then maybe we have to deal with that a little bit more. That's what I would do. Again, do it in that order, and hopefully you find it right away, and hopefully it's not too expensive to fix. All right, guys, I'm gonna wrap it up there. Questions, comments, go down below. You like the video, hit that thumbs up. With that, I'm out. Have an awesome day, and I'll talk to you again next time.